Oh, great. Housing
Yeah,
or
housing,
health.
homeless, human
Okay,
rights.
yeah.
HHHR.
Brendan, can you make me co-host of this meeting, please?
I did make you co-host. Not showing as such. Oh, I see. You're
And
Yes.
just a technical question. It says we have 28 participants, but I only see 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 20, and I don't see how to scroll over.
The other 8 are members of the public. So we've got some folks on the phone. Molly's here. Sam from Senator Hoylman's office.
okay, Cody. So I thought you were co-host, but now it looks
Right.
like you're calling in by phone.
Right, there are 2 instances because the one by phone is Charles.
Oh, okay, okay.
So look for the one that's not by phone.
Okay, for some reason,
Thank you.
We're co-host. For some reason, I thought you were co-host before, and
Thank you.
and the stream has started.
Great. I'm calling the meeting to order on Monday, May 18th at 6:35 p.m. And this is a joint meeting for the CB6 Health and Education and Housing, Homeless and Human Rights Committee. My name is Corinne Vanderdonk, and I'm the chair of the CB6 Housing, Homeless and Human Rights Committee. Joining me in chairing tonight's meeting are John Keller, Chair of the Health and Education Committee, Abigail Krusmark, Vice Chair of the Health and Education Committee, and a member of the Housing, Homeless and Human Rights Committee. Rich Mintz, Vice Chair of the Housing, Homeless and Human Rights Committee, and a member of the Health and Education Committee. This meeting is called to order, as I said, now it's 6:36, and tonight we are joined by Assistant District Manager Cody Osterman and Community Associate Brendan Berth. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Tonight's minutes will be taken by Claire Brennan. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Claire.
And we will now take attendance by roll call. Cody will conduct a roll call for both committees.
Right. I'm going to call the roll for each committee individually, and for the folks that are on both, you have the honor of being called twice, so congratulations. All right, Kyle Athide.
Here.
Okay. Joan Berenbaum.
You didn't get yours?
Joan?
Here.
All right. Claire Brennan.
Here.
Andrew Gross.
Here.
Kathleen Kelly. Kathleen? Okay. Abigail Krusmark.
Here.
All right. Rich Mintz. Rich, did he step out to get his package?
Probably.
All right. Karen Moore. Did Karen join? Raj Nair.
Here.
Matt Roberts.
Here.
Corinne is here, right? And from Health, Azia Badi.
Here.
Okay. Neil Barkley. I see Neil listed. Neil, can you speak? Maybe he's having some connectivity issues. All right. Elvie Barroso,
Here.
Dan Devine. Dan Devine. Okay. John Keller is here.
Here.
Abby and Rich are on both committees. Philip Napolitano.
Yes, here.
All right. Seema Shaw
Here.
and Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
Okay, that means you should have a quorum in both committees. Corinne?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of either committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the April 20th meeting was distributed to Housing, Homeless, and Human Rights Committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt these minutes. Committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the April 20th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website.
And the minutes from the February 25th meeting were distributed to Health and Education Committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt these minutes. Committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Okay, seeing no objections, the minutes from the February 25th meeting are adopted and will be soon available on the CB6 website.
Okay, and setting some ground rules. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, no one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find a raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulties, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. Very important, the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during a meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, John, Abby, or I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. We are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. So the order of the adopted agenda will be followed. Somebody's not on mute, that's okay. So we will start with the first topic on tonight's agenda.
I think Azia has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Corinne, I couldn't, can you guys hear me okay? I just wanted to make a small amendment to the agenda. It says alternate sides on number 1. It should say sites. There's a typo.
Ah, okay, thank you for letting us
Yes,
know.
that
Yes.
was just, it's small.
Yes.
And it moved very quickly. I saw it beforehand. So, all right, we can go on with the agenda item.
Well spotted. Okay, so we'll start with the first item, which is the discussion of alternate sites for older children temporarily residing at the Children's Center at 492 First Avenue. I believe all the committee members received an email with the article with the describing the incident that kind of prompted this particular resolution. Can we put the resolution up?
Sure, I can do that right now. Okay, this is the item.
Okay.
And I can scroll up or down as needed.
Okay. I will just kind of try to shorten, kind of describe this in a short way. The ACS, the Children's Center, as we all know, temporarily takes in children that are removed from their homes and who have not yet been placed in foster homes. These are, a full across the ages. And the center was placed in CB6 in 2001. And recently there was an incident that is just kind of, how would I call it? One of the worst examples of many incidents that have been reported to CB6 over the years. This is not through the fault of ACS per se, and it's really just what CB6 just feels that placing older teenagers with younger teenagers exacerbates existing problems. And we wanted to have a discussion and maybe pass this resolution where we're asking for the children over 16 to be placed in an alternate site. And I wanted to kind of also take this to Claude for a minute, who has more information on on historical information on this issue. Claude, are you willing to talk about this for a minute?
Corinne, can I actually talk? Because
Oh, sure, of course.
the ACS Center actually came to the committee when I was chair of Health and Education. And Claude, is that okay with you? I know you on email deferred to me too, assuming it's okay. So we've been working with the ACS Center since before 2016 in that time, because we had been hearing of, there have been some concerns within the community because there had been children that were older kids that were having problems within the community. They were seen out late at night. So starting in 2016, the Administration for Children's Services would come basically on a quarterly basis to the health committee to sort of report out what they were doing, and so that the board can know more about what the center, the Children's Center, was doing to help address the needs of these kids, but also understand the problem, and as well as understand if there were ways that the board could advocate for greater funding and education and other things for the program. So we have made it a part of our district needs and budget requests to note that this is happening and that these older teens are there for extended periods of time. And as we had been sort of, as we've learned over time, is that they have had historical years and years, if not generational, sort of issues that have made it really difficult for them. And so, providing therapies and ways to sort of help them have their last chance to make sure that they can, get an education, have some sort of pathway for life was really important. And we really appreciated that the Children's Center was really trying their best to help these kids, but recognizing that sort of where it's placed, it really put many of these kids who, could go out in the evenings because they're not in jail. They're there to protect them from their families, so they were allowed to go out, but they would go out and were at risk for having other problems. And so there has been a consistent concern across the last few years about this. And I think the most recent incident really was sort of the nail on this sort of idea that we had been encouraging them to find an alternate site for several years. And we had been told as a committee that there were alternate sites that were in the plan, several that were being built and several that were promised. And we're still seeing incidents happening in the community and these older kids being here.
I only have one thing to add. Technically, ASEA has covered it all, except where we indicate older children and we put 16 plus, their mandate covers from the cradle to 21. So I want everyone to be clear and understand that we're not just talking about 16, 17-year-old kids. We're talking about up to the age of 21. And they are not in prison, so they're free to come and go in and out of the facility. And I think there really is a need to separate those older people, I won't call them kids, but from the younger ones.
Yes, thank you, Claude. And I believe the main perpetrator in the incident with the nurse from Bellevue was 19. Brendan, if you could you put up the article just for a minute?
Or just a moment.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we do have ACS here to talk to us about all of this. I've given them, and let me see, Rebecca, Rachel. I guess let me find Rachel first. I would, Brennan, can you give the floor to Rachel from ACS?
I'm going to do it in 1 second.
Oh, sorry, Cody, yes.
Okay, they said they've joined by phone, so let me see, 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel and Rebecca are participants.
Rachel, can you have the ability to unmute yourself now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, and has your colleague joined by phone? Which phone number are they using?
Let me check.
Let me see here. Just so I know which of these phone numbers I'm.
Is there one ending in 1499?
There's an 899, a 768, and a 366.
366, that's Rebecca's cell phone.
Okay, 1 second. All right, you both should have the ability to speak now.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to thank the committees for giving us the opportunity to talk with you and address these concerns. I know Rebecca has some remarks. So if Rebecca's going to speak, I'll turn it to her.
Great, and thanks so much, Rachel, and thank you. So good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committees regarding the ACS Children's Center. I'm Rebecca Chu, an Associate Commissioner at the New York City Administration for Children's Services, where I oversee the Children's Center. The Children's Center is a 24/7 temporary foster care placement facility where we provide care and support for some of New York City's most vulnerable children and youth who enter foster care due to abuse or neglect or family disruptions. The Children's Center serves approximately 2,500 unique children and youth each year, from newborns up to age 21, which is the age limit for foster care in New York State. The Children's Center is a temporary setting where most children are with us for less than 3 days. The children and youth at the Children's Center are with us at a time when they are undergoing a great deal of trauma, both due to the abuse or neglect they've endured and the uncertainty that they feel being in an unfamiliar setting, waiting for placement with a family or in a group home. As you can imagine, the COVID-19 pandemic amplifies their trauma. We are fully staffed with an on-site medical team that also partners closely with Bellevue childcare staff, social workers, programming and wellness staff, and engagement and visiting specialists to meet children's needs and provide services and support to address trauma. Being able to serve youth of all ages is critical so that we can care for sibling groups with children of varying age ranges, teen mothers who have young children in their care, and older youth with specialized needs who can receive comprehensive medical and mental health supports on site. Separating siblings or young mothers from their children would add to trauma and cause additional harm. We've been privileged to work in this community with many of you and with our partners in the NYPD 13th Precinct to make sure that we are good neighbors and to work together to keep the community safe. In prior years, the daily census at the Children's Center and the proportion of older youth we served grew for a number of reasons, and I'm pleased to say that thanks to targeted investments and interventions, we have now seen both the average census and the proportion of older youth decline before and during the current public health crisis. ACS's efforts have included adding case planners and a family finding team to the Children's Center to focus on finding more family members to care for the children. This has actually led to an increasing kinship placements with family and friends from 31% to 39% over the last 2 years. Ongoing foster care recruitment has also resulted in an increase in the number of foster homes by over 50% in the last 2 years. Implementing a new foster care placement module, a technological solution that has helped us more efficiently match children with the foster care placements most suited to their needs. Also, adding capacity with our contracted residential placement providers to serve older youth with high needs who require additional structure and support. For the young people we serve on site, we connect them to education and programming to build pro-social skills and keep them positively engaged. Pillars in this community have been incredible partners, from NYU Dental to Bellevue Hospital to the National Arts Club to the 13th Precinct, not to mention individual board members and neighbors have all helped us carry out our work by sharing your great ideas and resources. Special thanks, for instance, to Corinne, who made many children's dreams come true by generously donating tickets to the New York City Comic-Con, which provided them with a special experience they will never forget. Given the progress we have made together and with our crucial mission to ensure the safety and well-being of New York City's children, we respectfully urge the committees to not pass this resolution. We remain committed to our community engagement activities, such as the Children's Center Advisory Board, attending Build the Block meetings, and we are always available to answer questions and work to address any issues as they may arise. I want to also add that Deputy Inspector Steve Hellman from the 13th Precinct is also on this call. And if the committee will permit, he, I think, would like to say some words as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you for the shout out. It was absolutely my pleasure. It's the least we could do. Before I turn it over to the deputy, I'm wondering if any of the committee members have questions or comments.
I have a question, just an information question. This is John Keller. If we introduce this exclusion, or however you want to describe it, for 16-year-olds, does that impact your ability to work with the broader family, is my question. In other words, is this, would this, if this kid has a brother or a sister who's 11 or 12 or 9 or whatever, does the 16-year-old exclusion impact your ability to work with those kids?
It would actually, for the most part, unless it's unsafe for the siblings to be together, which that's the exception, not the norm, it would actually be devastating to separate the siblings at a time when they've been removed from their families, and that's literally like the only family they have left. So if a 16-year-old was staying elsewhere and their 9-year-old, sibling, little brother, little sister to separate them, it causes tremendous trauma. And in fact, we strive, to keep kids together whenever possible when they transition to foster homes.
And thank you. That
And other
answers my question. Thank you.
It have terrible. I mean, and a mother and a baby. We couldn't do that.
Rebecca, is there a way where we could carve out an exception for family units within the reso? Yeah, I don't know. Does that make that too complicated is that just kind of an unrealistic ask at that point?
I mean, it's, I guess we're just trying to understand it. Our kids have very varying needs. And, kids, just by virtue of age 16 and up, they all are individuals and they all have strengths as kids, and some have gotten in trouble with the law as well. I certainly think that we want to keep families and sibling groups intact. We want to keep mothers with their children, especially as they're learning to be new mothers. We also need to care for kids who need more specialized care settings, who are older, but maybe developmentally delayed or intellectually disabled, to support them until they can transition to a setting that can really support them.
Okay.
And
Asia, you had a question?
Rebecca, I really do appreciate that you guys have done a lot and really implemented a lot of different programs, as well as worked really well with the NYPD. I know there was one time when you pointed out that as a percentage of the kids that come, these older teens were a smaller percent, and the ones who were actually the problem were even a smaller percent. Do you offhand have those numbers for us?
Actually, yeah. So every month on our website, ACS publishes a monthly flash report that has the average daily census at the Children's Center, right? So the latest report from April is actually on the website, and Rachel can share the link if you'd like after the meeting. And we're anticipating that the May flash report will go up next week. And the data shows a consistent decrease since last year in the average number of kids that we serve on a daily basis. For instance, this year, just looking at, before and after COVID, from January to April of this year, the average number of kids we served was 66. Same time last year, it was 79. Not only that, but the percentage of older youth has been consistently decreasing. In the spring of 2019, the kids between 14 and 18 was around half of our census at the Children's Center. In recent months, this group has gone down to less than 30% of our population. So the more recent trends are trending down. I hope that answers your question, Asia.
Yeah, and I think you also pointed out at one point, it's not even of the kids that are older, it's a smaller percentage of those kids that are the problem children. I would say that. I know there's a better word for that, so I apologize, right? But the ones that are going out and creating some of these issues are even a smaller percentage of those older kids that we have.
Yes, I mean, kids, they're teenagers. We have added so many new programs, and we'd love to catch you all up on it. I remember we presented about the Credible Messenger mentors a while back, right? And so, and I know that Assistant Commissioner David Bauer presented about restorative practices. So that's also has grown since our last Community Advisory Board meeting. But yeah, numbers wise, the population has really decreased in terms of older teens. And we we've added capacity, which also can meet the needs of our higher needs older youth. So I think with that growth in capacity, that's also helped with the reduction in the population at the Children's Center.
With your growth in capacity, how are you able to handle the continuing crisis that the community feels? We understand the programmatic effort that you're making, but we still have the problem, and it's been going on continually. I mean, it's been over 2 years and we still have incidents that occur. What's your solution to minimize among that smaller population the effect on our community? You're
Thank you,
working with
Claude.
the precinct.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps we can, if the committee will, allow Deputy Inspector Hellman to chime in, since this is, an NYPD neighborhood impact.
Sorry, Corinne, can I ask?
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew. Yes.
More like a half statement. Normally I ask questions, it's sort of like a statement, but I just want to, before the representative from the NYPD, I think the inspector speaks, and I especially appreciate them for joining the call. I just want to add to what Claude had said. I'm certainly, there are many people who are on this board who are much more familiar with the history of the center than I am, with some of these issues. But from my perspective, and I appreciate, again, just like Claude had referenced, everything that has been said about the programs, this facility that are being done across the city to help this segment of our community in need. I'm not really satisfied with what I'm hearing about how this is not going to happen again. The story about this incident is horrific. It cannot happen. And so I think I need to hear, as a member of this board, and I'm more than happy. I know that the NYPD has a different set of responsibilities here in terms of reacting to crime, and that this city agency has more responsibility for preventing, as I see it, these types of incidents from happening, or sort of regulating, as Claude referenced, the space in which they're in charge of. But I'm just not really satisfied with what I'm hearing, that these types of incidents are not gonna happen again in our community. We can't have people walking around in fear that people from this facility are gonna come and beat them up and rob them.
Thank you, Andrew. Rebecca, shall I have the deputy speak to that?
Sure. And,
Okay.
I'm happy to also give some comments after Deputy Inspector Hellman.
Okay. Okay, great. Deputy Inspector Hellman, are you available? I'm not quite sure.
He's, I think, joined by phone.
Yes.
And I don't know which of the numbers is his.
He joined by phone. His last four digits is 2768.
Right, 1 second.
All right, I think I'm unmuted. Hi.
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 Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. I hope everyone's well and safe and healthy. Very trying times. Thank you for having me on the call. Just a brief update on the 13th precinct. We were at 30% with COVID down. We had 60 cops out sick with COVID. And now we're down to 3. We're feeling good. We're strong. We're back to almost full capacity. Thank you. I want to apologize. I'm not sitting at my desk. I'm home in Long Island, so I don't have statistical data to back up what I say. But we are down in crime since the last 2 months of COVID. I don't know what attributed to it. I think because the majority of our crime is property crime. We are down 10% now. Prior to COVID, we were almost up 10%. Our street robberies are down significantly. So let's get to the point what we're talking about. We're talking about ACS. So just to, I know we keep talking about 28th Street, the nurse. So I don't know what prompted this call, and we talk about ages. But when I look at an overview of the crime committed at ACS, it's not the older kids. I hate to tell you, it's the younger kids. And that 28th Street nurse being robbed, there were 3 robberies on 28th Street in a 3-week period. 2 were nurses, and 1 was an elderly female. All 3 had a common denominator. It was a female named Yvette Cruz. She's 14, and she resides at that facility. So I don't know where the age significance comes into play, but it's the younger kids. And listen, they can be helped. They come from tough families. I give a tough police explanation on stuff. I call them, the problematic kids. And there's only a couple of, and Rebecca always gets mad at me, bad apples. But a lot of it I see are the younger.
Kids. Yes.
So let me just finish. Since that 28th Street incident, in those 3 weeks, we apprehended every perpetrator involved. There was, his name fails me. I don't know if that's the individual we're talking about. He was 19. But everyone else involved was under the age of 14. Since that time, we made 28th Street a safe corridor. We have 3 light towers, one in front of the ACS facility, one on Park Avenue South, one on Broadway. We have shuttle buses for the nurses. It was a very, very egregious act. I understand they are frontline people and they were robbed, and it's unacceptable. Apparently, the girl involved did have a pre-existing problem with the nurses being through her negative interaction at Bellevue Hospital. And I think that was the impetus for those robberies on 28th Street. Just our relationship with ACS, I can't tell you enough what they do for as far as the cooperation with the NYPD. And listen, we are at opposite ends of the spectrum. The police is about apprehension, it's about arresting, it's about keeping the neighborhood safe. And Rebecca does a great job with her program. She's empathetic. And we meet somewhere in the middle, I got to admit. And I don't know the gentleman that spoke. We're not about reacting. We're not about being reactive. We're about preventative as well. And we want to prevent crimes as well. So having a good relationship with ACS, which we do, and hearing these complaints. If I could know what you're seeing right now, because when I look at my statistical data, whether it's 311, 911, crime, I'm not seeing it right now. So if someone could tell me what you're seeing right now, because I don't have it. I don't see whether it's related to COVID, whether it's correlated to that. Listen, I'm not saying we can't have an uptick or a spike. I'm not saying everything's hunky-dory. But right now, I'm not seeing it. So what are you seeing, or are you just being concerned about another uptick? That's my spiel. Any questions? I'm ready.
Okay, great.
Corinne, I think Abby has her hand raised.
Oh, great. Abby, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't figure out how to do it in the system. I guess I'm a little confused about where this policy recommendation came from, because it does seem like even if we were to separate out the kids, crime is crime, even if they were in separate sort of facilities. So I'm a bit concerned that we're fixating on this one incident. One incident makes bad policy when people overreact to it. And obviously it's terrible and we need to respond as the community, but I want to make sure that what we do moving forward is grounded in good policy for these kids in the neighborhood. And I just don't really understand how the crime piece connects to the age piece and where that policy has come from, if maybe someone could shed some light there.
All right, that's not for me. That's a question for somebody else. The age. No, if that's for me, what I'm trying to say is I don't understand. I can't. It's out of my pay grade to discuss why you don't want older problematic kids at that facility. Because what I see is I don't base the crime or whatever I see on the age. It's on the individual. So I don't understand what. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't. When I look at a crime sheet or whatever, I'm looking at it for what it is, and what I'm seeing is the younger kids committing the crimes. So I don't know what the impetus is for separating them.
Yeah, it was during a discussion after we had seen these incidents in the news, and several of us were discussing the incident and just kind of the historical.
Well, the nurse was robbed by a 14-year-old.
Inspector, Inspector, with all deference, this is not a one-year look or a one incident look. I don't want to be on the opposite side of supporting the kids, but the incidents over the last 2 to 3 years, including incidents with NYU residents, were older kids, and they were from ACS. And
Well, listen, I'm not. I'm here about the black and white. Yes, street robberies a year ago, up to a year ago, were at an all-time high. A majority of our street robberies were committed by ACS residents. Now, I'm not saying that's not true. I thought we're on here about an age issue.
well, that's who it was. It was older kids. So that's.
I don't have no. That's
No,
not
I'm
accurate.
explaining where it comes from. It's not like it just came out of this one incident. It came out of the several.
I'm not here to argue. What's an older kid? What does that mean?
I didn't hear what you said.
What do you, chronologically, what are you referring to as an older kid? I don't understand what that means.
17, 18, 19. Those were like 19-year-old kids.
That's negative. That's negative. Our street robberies were committed by perpetrators from the ACS facility at a lower age than that.
You had incidents that occurred on 28th Street that involved kids.
Listen, I'm not here to argue. I'm telling you statistics.
But I'm giving you the
I'm
incident.
here to tell you that. All right.
I'm giving you the incidents.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Claude. And yeah, no, this is, it's, yeah, I mean, I'm mostly not here to argue. And I think, I have also heard
You're
about
asking
the older
for an
kids.
NYPD.
Yeah.
You're asking for an NYPD statistical aspect.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you that street robberies in the 13th precinct spiked from residents in the ACS facility. When you look at the age group of the majority of the people that were arrested, they were under the age of 16. That's a fact.
Okay, well, that's
Next
really
question.
that's really good. That's really important information, and it's what Abby said. You know, we definitely don't want to jump the gun because of one or two recent incidents.
Corinne?
Yes.
Is it okay if I just add maybe a thought of just listening to what's been said just by some of our, our members and PD? One opinion that I'm starting to form here, I think there's two problems. I think the first problem is that there's just a general issue with this facility overall. And I think that we can sit here and debate, and I don't want to debate, NYPD, and I respect very much the work that they all do and that they're trying to get a handle on the situation.
Definitely.
So I want to just preface that, but what it seems like there's clearly a problem with this facility, okay, with crime that is from there. Whether they're 14 years old or 18 years old, there's a problem that has to be addressed somehow, and it's impacting our community. On the other hand, there's a great question that has come up: if the remedy to this problem is what we're prescribing in this resolution. One option could be, and Corinne, I would defer to you, is maybe we take a second look at the reso. Maybe there's a different way that we want to approach this facility than what we're recommending. But as far as I see it, there's definitely a problem with this facility. Regardless of the age, NYPD is agreeing with us that there is a problem. And I think that has to be addressed no matter what we do.
Thank you, Andrew. Matt has his hand raised. Matt, you have the floor.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I just want to throw out one other thing here. And prior to COVID, we were seeing a ton of street robberies across all of Manhattan. And this just happens to fit the description of one of those examples. So I think the problems here extend well beyond the scope of yes, and they just happen to have a group of kids that are situated.
Yeah, I agree with the last two guys. This is Hellman again. So when you look at the whole city, prior to COVID, because crime, the volume-wise is going down, but right prior to the virus, we were seeing citywide, not just at ACS, that the youth crime was so significant.
Yeah.
So the police commissioner, the chief of department, along with the mayor, they implemented the YCO program, which is like the NCO program. That's how significant youth crime, not just at ACS, but throughout the whole city, is spiking. You know what I mean? So it's definitely significant, and I agree that it is problematic. But right now it's on the. Someone besides the incident on 28th Street, is someone seeing something now besides historically what we see from the ACS kids? Is something that I could address for you?
No. No. Well, thank you. Okay, so I think we should close this discussion unless anybody else has something completely new to add to this. What I would like to suggest is I think the separation of siblings or even children from young mothers is a very important part of this that we need to consider that isn't considered yet in this resolution. Maybe that just kind of makes this particular so you know, maybe we need to go back and rewrite this. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Or we can vote on it as is.
Kyle has his hand.
Kyle has his hand raised.
Yeah, I
Kyle?
was just gonna reiterate. I think that there needs to be at least some edits to this resolution as is. That's just my suggestion, because I think, to reiterate what other people have said, obviously this is not an isolated incident. Obviously there needs to be some sort of action taken, but I'm not sure, like Abby was saying, that it's directly connected to age. That very well may be the case. I'm not very much sure, but I think until we have more data to put something substantive together, that a resolution like this would just displace older children at this point without a proper alternative to that. That's just how I feel about it.
I think I agree, Kyle. Anybody feel strongly about putting this to a vote?
I mean,
Andrew?
I agree with Kyle's comments. I think that as I said before, I think the data is a little unclear, but I do feel, again, as I said, I do feel strongly that some kind of resolution is needed. We can debate it, we can talk about it, but some kind of resolution is needed to clarify how this facility is, or how the policies are going to be changed over there to stop this.
Okay, well, let's shelve this, and if anybody has any ideas, if anybody else wants to work on this. This was written by Asia. Thank you so much. Claude was part of this conversation. I would love more voices on this. I think this should continue to be both a housing committee and a health and education committee issue that should be joined. John, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to table it, someone should move to table it or move it to a vote. I mean,
Okay.
that
Yes.
would be my opinion. There are complexities here that I was not aware of, but I respect the people who brought it forward. So we either move it to a vote or we table it. So I would leave that to people to decide.
Okay, so I'll move to table it.
I second that.
That doesn't need to be seconded, so we just need a vote on that. Yeah.
Claude? Claude, did you raise your hand?
Yeah,
or was...
I raised my hand. You should table it to a specific time, like to your next meeting or your meeting in September. You don't want to just table it.
Okay, we'll table it to the next meeting, to June.
Do you want
Okay.
to see if anyone objects to this?
Any objections to tabling it to June?
Does your committee have a meeting in June, Corinne?
Yes.
Okay, because health and education wasn't going to, but we would join you for that meeting if that is what you wish to do.
Okay, I appreciate that, John.
And my understanding parliamentarily is that a motion to table has to be voted on. So Cody,
Yeah, it's not debatable.
It's not debatable.
Oh, it's not?
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's not
Now we
debatable.
know.
It has to be voted on. Cody, do you want to? Who should call the roll of this?
We can do a roll call on this. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, if it's it has to be voted on. If
Yeah,
it's a
let
table,
me,
a motion to table.
Pull up the attendance list. 1 second. Okay. So this is a motion to
with table till June. Yeah, I would say that would be my suggestion. But whoever is making the resolution should specify that. Making the motion should specify that.
Okay, I make a motion to table this resolution to the meeting in June, the housing and homeless meeting in June.
Second.
Okay, let me, I can call this roll very quickly. 1 second. Kyle Thide,
I'm in favor of tabling and also willing to help out if anyone wants edits or anything like that.
okay. Asia? Asia Body?
I'm in favor of tabling. It may be better to wait till September if we need some more time, but let's see.
Neil Barkley? Neil? Is Neil having? Oh, okay. Elvie?
In favor of tabling.
Great. Joan Berenbaum?
In favor of tabling.
Claire Brennan?
In favor of tabling.
Right. Dan is still not here. Andrew Gross?
In favor.
John Keller?
In favor of tabling.
Kathleen's still not here. Abby?
In favor of tabling.
Rich Mintz?
In favor.
Karen's still not here. Phil Napolitano? Phil? Okay. Raj Nair?
In favor of tabling.
I'm sorry, Cody, did you call me? I'm sorry if I missed it.
No, you're in 2 more people.
Sorry, thank you.
Matt Roberts?
In favor of tabling.
Seema Shaw?
In favor of tabling, thanks.
Corinne Vanderdonk? Corinne, you're muted.
I'm in favor of tabling.
Claude L. Winfield?
I'm in favor of tabling, but I don't think that the chair can make the motion. You need to check.
All right. Jeff Zellen?
In favor of tabling.
All right. So that certainly passed.
Great. Well, thank you, Deputy Hellman. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate you all coming on for this and giving us the much needed information to be well informed to go forward with this. Thank you so much. Which brings us to number 2, which John will
Sure.
lead.
Okay, the second resolution, am I on? Yes, I am. Okay, is to encourage continued free and readily available internet access to New York City students in temporary housing after schools are reopened for physical classroom participation and other activities. And the resolved of this resolution is that Community Board 6 encourages New York City and the Department of Education to continue to provide students in temporary housing with the devices and internet connectivity necessary to fully participate in remote learning and other educational supports and benefits after the COVID crisis. The background on this resolution, and I'd like to thank Corinne and Jeff for their work on it, is that the Department of Education was completely unprepared in 1 week to move to remote learning for 1.2 million students. And so this had a very choppy beginning, to put it politely, but over the last couple of weeks, certainly in the last week or so, this has improved dramatically, not just for students in temporary housing, but for English language learners and kids with disabilities, though that is by still no means a perfect process. So the intent of this, and secondly, I attended a meeting last week with Donalda Chubney, the superintendent of District 2, Marisol Rosales, the executive superintendent for all the schools in Manhattan, and a lot of other people. And this is obviously an issue that's very, very much at the top of the priority list of the DOE. So we're not here telling the DOE it isn't doing its job. What we're telling them is that to please make sure that when we get back to whatever normal is, and none of us have any idea what normal is going to be, when we ever get back to whatever normal is, that we not forget to keep providing this kind of support for kids in temporary housing. And that's basically what this resolution is doing. And the data here is quite compelling and well sourced. And so we would invite any discussion or comments from committee members and then from the public as well.
Well, I want to raise my hand. Here you go. John, can I just say something?
Of course.
Brendan, if you want to scroll up again to the top of this resolution. I just feel like it almost kind of goes back to the discussion we just had with ACS about kids. You know, I mean, look at the number of students in New York City that are either living in shelters or are doubled up with families. I mean, this is a huge amount of students. And, you know, one of the whereases is, you know, if in order, you have to break the cycle of homelessness. And the only way to do that is through education. And education, I have young kids without a laptop or, you know, an iPad and internet, they're just not going to make it. And so this, you know, what has been done because of COVID, we should really encourage, and I don't think any of our electeds are against this, we should encourage that this gets built on as opposed to yanked away. That's my 2 cents.
Are there any other comments from committee members? Thank you, Corinne. Any comment? Go ahead.
John, I had heard that actually folks were, that city was trying to address this. I'm trying to read the reso on my phone. Have you heard anything about the city working towards this? Because I thought there was some sort of work with.
Oh yeah, they are. I mean, this is, whoops, am I on? Okay. I mean, as everyone on this committee knows, people who know me, I am not always a big fan of what the DOE does. I mean, I'm kind of like sometimes against a lot of what they do. But on this issue, especially when they became alert to what was going on, you know, they're now down to where they could get a Wi-Fi enabled laptop to a kid within 48 hours. I mean, and that's what they're doing. I mean, but it was choppy at the start, as I said. So what we're really just saying here, as far as I can see in this resolution, what I would like to say is, don't stop. You know, you got to keep this going. That's how I see this.
Great. Can I make a motion to Claude? Oh, sorry.
I was going to call the question.
Yeah, we'll call the question, and I don't think, yeah, neither, could someone besides Corinne or I make a motion for this to go? So Claude has moved it.
I second.
Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded. Cody, should we take the roll on this? A vote, I guess, on this. Excuse me for misspeaking.
Yeah. All right, I'll read the names again and just unmute yourself and announce your vote in favor, opposed, abstain, etc. Kyle Athide?
Oh yes, I'm in favor.
I didn't know that was one of the choices. Asia Bowdy?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Neil Barkley? Neil, he's been voting through the chat. I think he's having some.
Yeah, Neil said he had some mic issues.
Mic. Okay, great. Elvie Barroso?
In favor.
Joan Berenbaum?
In favor.
Claire Brennan?
Yes, in favor too.
Dan's absent. Andrew Gross?
In favor.
John Keller? John?
I know I had to find my unmute. Sorry, yes, in favor, thank you.
Kathleen still not here. Abigail Cruzmark?
In favor.
Rich Mintz? Rich,
In favor, sorry.
Karen Moore is still not here. Philip Napolitano. Bill? Okay. Raj Nair,
In favor.
Matt Roberts,
In favor.
Seema Shaw,
In favor.
Corinne Vanderdonk,
In favor.
Claude L. Winfield,
Yes.
and Jeff Zelen.
Yes.
Great. Motion passes.
Great. Motion passes. This is great. And so number 3 is a discussion of emergency rent relief legislation under federal, state, and city level. And this has been researched by Abby Krusmark, Joan Berenbaum, and Kyle Athahay. And Abby will be leading the discussion on this. Take it away, Abby.
Thanks. Let me try to share my screen. Hold on.
Yeah, you were made a co-host earlier, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, I forgot how to do that. 1 second. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so Kyle, Joan, and I took a look at the rent proposals floating around right now. There's really a lot out there. I don't know, Corinne, before we kick it off, do you have a sense of what you would like the committee members to get out of it or what we might do in the future?
I just felt like we should just kind of inform each other and then take it from there. Form opinions
Okay.
after we have all the information.
Okay, that sounds good. So I would say in general, there's a lot of proposals around delay, so not having to pay rent now, or not being, let me restate, not being put in eviction proceedings now if you don't pay rent, but still having to pay that back rent. There's proposals on cancellation, which would mean if you didn't pay rent for a period of time, there would be no back rent, no penalization. And then broadly term protection, expanding existing protections, making new protections. So as I go through this, I think there's a lot. We still don't know. It's changing really fast. If we need more information on something, the 3 of us are more than happy to do more research on it. This is really just intended to give you an overview of the major points that we found. So in terms of what's been happening at the state executive level, the governor issued an executive order on a moratorium on evictions that initially went to June, and it was recently extended to August 20. So no one's in housing court for eviction now if they don't pay their rent. Protects renters from late fees, and recently it allows tenants to pay with their security deposit. I know the borough president has been looking into the procedure by which someone actually pays rent with their security deposit, because I think that was not entirely clear when this rolled out, and I'm not quite sure where that's at right now. There's also protections for homeowners to be able to put off their mortgage for 90 days. This is only for residential properties, and additional protections around waiving late fees, placing loans in forbearance. That came from the Attorney General's office. And Joan and Kyle, if you have anything, feel free to jump in. So in terms of what's been proposed on the federal level, these are just 3 of the main proposals. The first would be a cancellation, and this would be sort of the most protection for renters. It would cancel rent for a period of time allow full forgiveness, no back rent needed to be paid, no accumulation of debt. And then for landlords on the flip side who weren't being paid, they would be paid out of a federally funded sort of relief package to cover their losses. The other two proposals are more around expanding. The first one is providing direct cash assistance to households who are unable to pay their rent at this time. And then the Affordable Housing Security Act would suspend rent payments for Section 8 and NYCHA. And our Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney has been in favor of HR 6515 and also the expanding the housing security package, the third one listed there. There's also a lot going on at the state level, everything from prohibiting landlords from evicting to, allowing tenants to terminate a lease early, so just additional protections to renters outside that direct rent house exchange of money, establishing a rental assistance program. For that fourth one listed there, this would apply to tenants who had suffered losses of income due to COVID directly, and those who also had a rent burden greater than 30%. But obviously in our district, we're highly rent burdened. So I imagine that, any restrictions placed on tenants who needed to access this funds, the rent burden wouldn't impact CB6 all that much because we have a high rent burden already. There's one cancellation package at the state level. I know Carlina Rivera has been in favor of that, has spoken in favor of that. This would waive rent for 90 days. There would be no back rent needed to be paid. I'm not sure when that 90-day clock would start, but there's also proposals to, I think it's maybe at the city level, to sort of end the clock once the emergency has been declared over. So I'm sure there would be some, the 90-day clock would go with the state of emergency. Let's see. And then on the city council level, we found two prominent bills. The first would sort of amend the definition of harassment to cover those who have been impacted by COVID for any number of reasons. I think there's a concern here that this overlaps with the New York City human rights law, in that a tenant who is seeking protection under this in housing court would receive possibly less protection than if they had gone directly to the commission. But that was brought up at a hearing, so it's possible that that would be addressed moving forward. And then there's a notable sort of delay bill that would push, as I was just mentioning, the eviction until after the state of emergency, or not the eviction, but the rent payment until after the state of emergency had ended. And it did seem like there was a provision that specifically for people impacted by COVID, those payments would not kick in until April 2021. However, that language was a little unclear. I'd have to go back and look at that in more detail. Also on the city council level, Councilmember Powers has spoken in favor of enhancing two existing programs, the senior citizen rent increase exemption and the disability rent increase exemption. I think just from looking at these sort of proposals, this would be a really good way to sort of expand the coverage of those programs during this time and sort of include new beneficiaries under those, and sort of expand existing programs without dealing with without running into the problems of what happens when a landlord doesn't pay rent and then can't pay their property taxes. So I think some of these proposals that have been put forward are really good in that sense, because then they don't impact New York's budget to quite the same extent. Okay. Also, proposals by Councilmember Powers in terms of rent, sort of rent regulated tenants, suspending the primary residence requirement for rent stabilized tenants. Right now, if someone is sheltering in place outside of their primary residence, there would be no fear of sort of losing that residency requirement to keep their current apartment. And also ideas for using existing programs and tools to help tenants, now expanding sort of donut holes or closing donut holes and expanding sort of the baseline level of what one would need to make in order to access these programs. Yeah, that was a really quick overview. I think at a global level, the concern is that when these moratoriums on evictions lift, there's going to be a flood of eviction proceedings, and it's going to really overwhelm not only housing court, but also sort of the existing stock of houses in New York City. There'd be really concern about homelessness at that point, if all these evictions came in at one time. Yeah, Corinne? I thought you raised your hand. Oh, you're muted,
I just have a question when you're ready to take questions.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, just give me 1 second. But I think the sort of cancel rent movement as it's taken off is concerning for a number of reasons, just because it's not quite as simple as canceling rent, because landlords also pay state and local government taxes, which makes up a significant portion of the New York State budget, which funds obviously all of our social services, schools, parks, libraries. So from what I've been reading, and I'm no expert, but it does seem like the solution is to help renters pay rent at this time, which is why I think some of these more nuanced proposals around, helping rent stabilized, rent regulated tenants, and some of these senior and disability programs is a really good start for helping some of the most vulnerable people right now. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Abby, just from going through it, I understood that a lot of the kind of the state Senate question, the state Senate proposals don't work unless they get federal funding. Is that correct? So kind of like the first one needs to really pass, or that some kind of federal policy needs to pass in order for the state policies to work, legislations to work. Is that correct?
Okay, so Sam Vasquez from Senator Hoylman's office is also on the call. So I don't know if you would like Sam to speak to that, since he's on the call.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see Asya has a question too. So after that, maybe.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hi, this is Sam from Senator Hoylman's office. So thanks for giving me some time. I'm happy to be here. So Senator Hoylman has a number of the pieces of legislation that you guys are talking about. He proposed the Tenant Safe Harbor Act, which is S8192. And he has S8310 and S8188. And so you guys have it up on the board there. But the Tenant Safe Harbor Act basically makes it so that the rent that is due, well, first of all, I should say that, we're in support of the cancel rent movement, because we think that, and we're sponsors of the bill as well, co-sponsors. We know that if you're out of work now and aren't making income, and then the evictions moratorium ends on August 20th, it's tough. It's nearly impossible to come up with the money and then avoid eviction. So first of all, we're in favor of that legislation. But in some other proposals that we have is a Tenant Safe Harbor Act, and it would make it so that all of the back rent is only eligible for a money judgment, which would make it so that you can never be evicted for that back rent. You'll never be able to be evicted. You would basically just go into a settlement, which over time, which would be determined by in housing court, you would establish a payment plan and over time be able to pay it back. But you would never be eligible for eviction due to that back rent. So that's the Tenant Safe Harbor Act. Then we know that a lot of folks have left their primary residence temporarily, and so we want to make sure they don't lose their rent stabilized units. And so we have that bill as well. And then we want to make sure that if people can't afford the rent, they're not liable for for the full lease, and so they can terminate early. That's another bill that we have. I also wanted to clarify something that we're concerned about is, while the governor expanded the evictions moratorium to August 20th, the expanded term only covers, he introduced a new hardship test so that only folks that are experiencing hardship from COVID-19, and that's loosely defined. And he did mention that's people that are, currently in need of unemployment insurance and things like that, are eligible for the evictions moratorium. So it's not a blanket eviction moratorium as was previously, that is currently the case. So that's something that we're concerned about and that we're working on, but just wanted to flag that for you guys as well. And to your question about whether federal aid is necessary prior to other state action being able to be taken, it just depends on the nature of the action. The state budget is, as you guys have kind of alluded to, is in bad shape, and we really don't have a lot of money for big proposals. Senator Hoylman has proposed a number of new revenue creating taxes, including the pied-à-terre tax that would tax over $1 million second homes, and that would create a significant amount of revenue and help fund new programs. But unfortunately, creating new revenue is kind of a long-term solution, and it would not be an immediate help. And so you're right in that, depending on what kind of ideas you guys are thinking of, if it requires a lot of money, it would ultimately need to be in conjunction with the federal government.
Thank you, Sam. So what is the timeline on this? Would the Congress first vote on something and then the Senate bills kind of float from that? Is it the other way around?
Yeah, so our current proposals don't require federal money, but something like what we do co-sponsor, the rent cancellation, that's still being crafted, so to speak. There's no final rent cancellation bill at the moment. I mean, there is one that's in the books, but that's something that still needs work. And so I don't have like a clear bill to look at, because even the sponsor, Senator Gianaris, who introduced that bill, is still working on it. And so I don't know if that bill would be like the Senate is paying the rent, or if it would be like or if that money is just forgiven. So it just depends on what the ultimate proposal is. If the proposal is that somehow the state government is paying for it, then yes, that would have to be in conjunction with the federal government, which which they would have to, release funds to the state. But, we've heard the rhetoric that the federal government has had towards helping states that are hard hit and making it a partisan issue about, red states, blue states. So I'm not sure exactly how that is going. It'd be good to hear from federal representatives on that. But if it's just if it's just like a rent forgiveness in a way that the Senate is not, the state is not paying for it, then we would have to figure out how to make the mortgages whole and small landlords whole. But that wouldn't need federal dollars, because that would, it depends on the proposal, I guess is what I'm saying.
Great. Asia, you've had your hand raised for a while. Maybe
Yeah,
you've left.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm here. So luckily still time to keep fasting. There's still another 15 minutes. Abby, this was really excellent. Thank you and Joan and Kyle for putting this together. It's really helpful. I had a question about scree and dree, because I was trying to read this. I was curious because my understanding with scree is it actually offers a tax abatement or a tax subsidy to the landlord if they provide that discount to individuals. So I know you mentioned that these were solutions that would not greatly impact the city budget. Was it just assumed that this was a smaller number of folks? And would this just expand the number of older adults who are eligible for it?
I don't know if I'm unsure of its impact on the city budget. I think it would be smaller than some of the more wide-reaching proposals that we looked at. But I do think some of these would expand eligibility, but I'll leave it up so we can read. It's on two screens. This is directly from Councilmember Powers. I know his office has been working closely on it. I'm personally not very familiar with scree and dree.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, at least in my conversations with Councilmember Powers' office, I don't believe that it would expand the number of people who are eligible for it. I think it would just look at the population that they have now, and for those specific cases where income has been affected, they would just essentially figure out, just going through a rent redetermination process to see if there were some adjustments that could be made. I don't believe it's putting more people onto it or expanding it in any other way, except to say that if you had any kind of loss of income, that there would be opportunity to redetermine that rent. So.
Okay, that's great. Just so you all know, as an FYI, actually, in our CB6, we have a high rate of older adults who would be eligible for scree who have not applied for scree. So there's just a lack of knowledge that they're eligible for scree or desire to apply. So if there is, I think this is a great thing. That would be another joint, possible joint, like I think we would support it and hopefully get the message out to folks that this is something that they are eligible for and help.
Exactly. Yeah, so that was another thing that we were discussing with Councilmember Powers' office as well, is just as a separate issue, is that there are people who are eligible for it, but like for many programs that people are eligible for that have some kind of benefit, you don't usually hear it being advertised. I wonder why. But there are a lot of people who are eligible for it and they just don't have the knowledge of it. And so as a separate sort of approach, actually educating people about the programs that they could be eligible for and are entitled to. So that's definitely true.
Great, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, just Sam, if you're still there, just a quick practical question. Are the Assembly or Senate actually going to vote on these things in the next 6 weeks, or what is happening on that front?
That's a good question. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't been briefed on when the next time the Senate will be coming to vote. I know that they are planning on coming back to vote on a package, some bills, that COVID-related bills. And I know that was supposed to be happening soon, but I don't have a date. I could follow up once we have more information.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Just to kind of, I guess, to go back to, so Sam, your office, Senator Hoyman supports the rent strike, and as far as I understand, what is so great about the rent strike is that it puts a certain amount of pressure where there currently is none when it comes to actual renters, especially with lobbyists and just of larger companies just having much more of a voice in all of this. But at the same time, I do hear this, the problem with that the city budget would be kind of decimated if there's no rents are paid. So how does that play out with the cancellation? Does the city and state taxes still have to be paid, but just not the rents? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. The proposal was introduced by Senator Gianaris, and the rent cancellation bill, and we have been supportive because we know that a lot of people are struggling. So that's something that that we're supportive of, to like help people that are in need. But as you mentioned, a lot of the details and the nuance have to be figured out, and that has not happened yet. So if you guys have ideas, I'm sure Senator Gianaris would welcome feedback on the bill. We co-sponsor the bill, and it's kind of because of the spirit of what that means, supporting, helping shift the power dynamic a little bit, and providing real relief to people that are struggling to pay the rent due to this unprecedented crisis. But our office does not hold the bill, so we don't have the task of actually drafting the nuance of it. So I actually don't know exactly if those taxes would still be due.
Thank you, Sam. Abby, Kyle, Joan, this is great. Anything else to add to this? What is your overall impression? What do you think, just kind of reading these, you think would be the most effective?
So yeah, so it's kind of going to your point earlier. A lot of this needs to be spearheaded at the federal level. There's a lot of things the state can do, but obviously fixed budget and obviously everything is sort of a priority now, especially with public health. But there can be a lot of things done in terms of rent cancellation and eviction prevention and protecting tenants at this time. That is basically a policy change. So there's a lot of great approaches in that way. I think at the end of the day, well, at least what I saw in my interpretation of all of this is that this is not really the time to be thinking about big or sort of like overarching housing themes, but really how do we affect and support people in this moment and for the foreseeable future, just to ensure that we can get through all of this together. So in terms of like policy, what I'm seeing at least is more about the incremental change and making sure that we can address the needs that are happening right now before jumping into something big. And I think that's a smart approach for circumstances that are wildly unknown for a long time.
Thank you, Kyle. Great. That brings us to the chair's reports.
Yeah,
John?
hi. So health and education, very brief. I'm acutely aware of the time, and Kyle and I are both on BASA, and after 90 minutes, BASA is just getting warmed up, but I'm aware that that's pretty much the limit of most of these meetings. So there is no chair's report. The Health and Education Committee will not meet until September, as we determined there was nothing on the agenda that would be compelling under the criteria set forth for holding meetings. However, if the ACS resolution is on the June agenda of the Housing, Homeless, and Human Rights Committee, then we would join you in a co-sponsored meeting there. That's it.
Thank you, John. And then I will also waive my chair's report. When it comes to all the new business, I want to pass it over to Rich Mintz, the new vice chair of Housing and Homeless. And he's going to briefly talk about the overnight closure of the subway and how it's affecting CB6 and our homeless shelters. And then right after that, I want to give Jim a quick a chance to talk about 337 East 17th. Rich, you can take it away.
Okay, I'll just be very brief. As we all know, the governor has started closing the subways overnight. The stated purpose is to allow them to be cleaned, but the actual purpose is so that homeless New Yorkers can be dumped out of the subway on the city of New York. What has been happening is that large numbers, over 100 people, are being bused to intake centers in the shelter system. Initially, it was only 30th Street for single men. That has been expanded, and there are a couple of other intake centers they're using, including Ward's Island. But in the first couple of days, this was basically dumped on the 30th Street, on the shelter system. 30th Street didn't have either capacity to house people or capacity to process them, and so dozens of people ended up sleeping on the street, outside, walking away, sleeping in the hallway, sleeping in the stairwell. You can see this picture here from one of the stories. There's a nastier story in the Post, more hostile, I think, to the homeless people. You know, the city has promised to house people in hotels. They have moved a few thousand people into empty hotel rooms, but there is a perception among some advocates and some members of the city council that they're not moving quickly enough. Stephen Levin of the city council has proposed requiring ACS to move. There are about 10,000 people involved that are not covered yet, have not yet been moved safely into hotels. There is a bill pending in city council that will require ACS to move everyone into single, not double occupancy hotel rooms immediately. And for all homeless facilities, city facilities that remain open, beds be moved 6 feet apart immediately. This has gotten a fair amount of support in council. Brad Lander has been loudly advocating for it. It got sneering and nasty pushback from the Department of Social Services on Friday. It's likely to be voted on tomorrow, or at least as of the last I heard, it was likely to be voted on tomorrow. It will probably pass, and the council is steeling itself to override a veto from the mayor if he does veto it. He's never vetoed anything, but there's noise about the possibility that he might veto this. The only other relevant fact to mention is that FEMA is likely to pay 75% of the cost of this. So budget objections are, in my opinion, a red herring. They are not. They're not the primary issue.
Thank you, Rich. I see that Andrew has his hand raised.
I actually had something else for new business. I can wait to add it until we finish this.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Rich? Thank you so much, Rich.
Yeah, there's not really any action for us until city council acts.
Okay, understood. Okay, then I will give the floor to Jim. Jim Collins.
1 second, let me
Mhm.
give him permission to speak. Jim?
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hi, Jim.
I'm just wanted to raise, well, first I want to raise the issue of 337 East 17th Street, but in passing, I just wanted to suggest that perhaps the temporary hospital that was built at the Jacob Javits Center could alleviate some of the overcrowding that is currently happening at First Avenue. I don't know if that hospital like facility was deconstructed once the Army National Guard left, but it would seem to me that that might be a good temporary solution to house the homeless that are coming out of the subway. That said, let me move on to 337 East 17th. That facility has for years, a couple of years now, since New Yorkers now have access to the Citizen app, that facility seems to be having police activity almost weekly. And of late, the last 3-4 months or so, that activity has also come with weapons. So weapons reports. I don't know if the deputy inspector is still on the line, but he might be able to speak more to it. But to my knowledge, and as confirmed with the board office, there is no community advisory board for this particular facility, and that's rather troubling given all of the work that the NYPD has to devote to this particular facility. I was wondering if this committee could suggest, recommend, pass a resolution requiring or requesting a community advisory board, because clearly the people who are running the facility at the current time don't really have a clue as to what they're doing. There shouldn't be that much trouble in one facility.
Thank you, Jim. I will definitely bring it up with Molly that maybe a cab is in order. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. And Andrew.
Hi, Corinne, thanks so much. So I wanted to follow, actually I was thinking about this over the week, and it follows the really nice presentation that we had on all the different sort of like COVID related rent regulations that are coming out. And so what I wanted to propose was, I don't know, and maybe someone here actually does the answer to this. I don't know if there's been any sort of looking into a city law or some sort of relief for utilities. I think one of the trends that we're seeing is that someone's trying to get in. One of the outcomes of this whole situation is people are in their homes a lot more. And so our utility bills are naturally going to go up. So I just don't know if the city is looking into trying to give some sort of relief through Con Ed to people, knowing that, again, like we're all inside, our utilities are going up because we're not at work. So I don't know if there's been any consideration into this through Con Ed. I think that's something worth looking at.
Definitely. I believe that the cancel rent movement includes the utilities. So canceling, but I mean, obviously that's a grassroots movement, but not from, I haven't heard it from, I haven't seen it go by from our legislators.
On a personal level, and again, I'm not here to get into debate. I have some different feelings about this whole idea of canceling rent.
Yeah.
I think that utilities can be dealt with through, whether they're tax abatements, or I have to answer this, but through tax abatement, another way to deal with it.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, is there any other old or new business that anyone else wishes to raise? Okay. Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
I
Okay.
second.
No one seeing, are there any objections? Seeing no objections, we will adjourn the meeting at 8:13 PM. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.